Good morning, everybody. This is the Layer 8 Trainings presentation of a XenApp and XenDesktop 7.6 webinar. In this webinar, we will be talking about the XenApp XenDesktop 7.6 features. I'll be doing a little bit of PowerPoints and some demonstrations. My name is David Dart. I am a CCI technical trainer, and I work for a company called Layer 8 Training. We are the largest Citrix authorized training partners in North America. We are a premium training center. Citrix sends their staff to us to train as necessary. So when they get new staff, they send them to us. We also collaborate with Citrix on courseware development and as well as lab development. I myself have participated in the development of the XenApp XenDesktop 7.6 deployment. If you were to check the textbook for the CXD 203 class, you'll see my name there as one of the subject matter experts. Now, if you go to our website and you decide that you want to take a class, we're going to give you a special incentive. And if you come in and purchase a Layer 8 training, any 5-day class, by November 20th, we're going to give you a gift. Now, today's training is going to deal with the new features inside of XenApp 7.6. As part of today's webinar, I will be doing some demonstrations. However, we have some more detailed videos that are available just for you as webinar participants. So in the handout section of your GoToWebinar section, you should see a handout. This is going to be a PDF document that you will be able to download, and it will take you to some specific links on the publishing of applications within the XenApp XenDesktop 7.6 environment, the configuration of StoreFront 2.6, as well as configuring NetScaler for authentication. So we're going to look at the new features inside of XenApp 7.6. Now, we're not going to cover all of them, primarily because we don't have the capability of, in the short amount of time, to cover everything. I'll hit the main ones, the ones that will most likely be appropriate for you in a short period of time, publishing of apps, things of that nature. So some of the newer features of 7.6, which is currently on Feature Pack 3, which just came out on the 1st of October. We'll talk about some of those features at the end. We allow the support for seamless local applications. What this means is that when the user has an application on their local machine, their endpoint device, and they are running a desktop on a server, it's a virtualized desktop, we give them the ability to launch their local application and it will appear to be within the desktop. This requires some configuration. So if you have an application that you really don't want to manage and you want to push it out on the user's machine, this is one way of doing it. We also, or the Citrix has also gone away from the IMA architecture that you saw with XenApp 6.5. With the XenApp 6.5, we use the independent management architecture over port 2512. Now we've gone to the FlexCast management architecture, which was developed with the XenDesktop 5.6 environment. And this gives us a little bit more resiliency as well as high availability. But it does require some additional configurations with your database. So no longer is the database not a single point of failure. Now it is, and we need to make sure that we do have the high availability on our database. However, if you don't, we have connection leasing, and connection leasing allows us to provide our users with kind of a back-end high availability for existing users and connections. We'll talk about that as well. Hybrid cloud provisioning, really nice feature where you can use the Citrix cloud or the Amazon cloud to deploy your virtual machines in the cloud. So this makes it very easy to expand your deployment without the operating expense of getting new hardware on the system. AppDNA allows you to come in and pre-test applications so you can trial them within an environment to ensure that they're actually going to work within the system. Remote PC with Wake on LAN, we have a little bit more capability with that to give our users the ability to use their desktops within the XenApp XenDesktop environment via StoreFront. And Receiver StoreFront, a lot of new features coming in with that. One of the things that I created last night was a StoreFront 3.0. I'll take you into that and show you what it is relatively quickly so you can see some of the differences that you're going to get in the environment. We do have simplified management. So with the 7.6 environment, this allows us to manage our deployments from a single location for our components. We actually have three areas that we look at with management. We have the Citrix Studio. The Citrix Studio, let me get this guy up here. Where is it? The Citrix Studio allows you to come in and configure your machines, that you have inside of your system. So we'd create what's called a machine catalog. This would allow us to create the machines that we're going to use inside of our system. It's going to allow you from one location to manage your applications. So you can come in and manage the applications that you want to publish out to your users. So from one console, we can now publish out Windows 8 desktops as well as server-hosted applications inside of our system in the environment. And we can also manage our licensing. So we no longer need to go over to the license server to manage the licensing for our deployment. We can do it all right here from this one location. Makes it very, very nice and easy to use. We've also got the storefront console. Let me get to my storefront console here. So we also have our storefront console, which allows us to configure our stores from one location. And the nice thing about storefront is you no longer need to create two components with the legacy web interface. Now you create the one store, and you're able to give your users access to the resources inside of your environment. We'll come back and look at that in just a few moments. We also have Director. Director is the management or the monitoring tool where we can come in and we can monitor our environment, and we have different levels of permissions or roles to where we can determine what our users can actually do when they get into our environment. And currently I have 11 sessions connected on the system for that. I do have a real quick question that relates to Director, and yes, Director is replacing EdgeSite on the system. And it's available for most of the licensing available. So it's available in all the licensing, and I'll show you that when we get into the licensing component. So we have the three different management tools that we use, and we're going to come in and look at these guys a little bit later. And so some of the questions I'm going to address at the end. So hold your thought and I'll get to them. All right, hardware requirements, going to go through this very quickly. Basically, you're looking at Windows Server 2012 or 2012 R2 or Server 2008 R2. Basic, what most people who are running 6.5 are running in any case. Disk space, 100 megs. That's all you need, as well as some additional software, .NET 3.5 if you're using Server 2008 R2 for your hosting application servers, .NET, ASP.NET, PowerShell is good, or Visual C. The supported hypervisors, obviously XenServer is up to 6.5, so the XenServer 6.5, that's the hypervisor I'm currently using in my environment. So on my lab system at home, that I'm using, I have a 6.5 environment, so this is supported, as well as the Hyper-V and VMware components are also supported within the XenApp XenDesktop components. SQL Server, this is where we're going to see a major departure from previous versions of XenApp and XenDesktop. I'm sorry, XenApp 6.5. With this one, your database is fully relational. So the database is fully relational in that the controllers in your system, which are taking the place of your XML brokers inside of the XenApp XenDesktop, the XenApp 6.5 environment, require a connection to the SQL Server at all times to ensure continuity in your system. And we can support this in multiple deployments, standalone, clustered, mirrored, or the always-on. Mirrored and always-on are the two you see most frequently. Mirrored is extremely easy to set up. Always-on gives you more enterprise scalability. The one component that does not support these is if you're using the SQL Server Express versions. These only support the standalone versions on the system. Now, when we're looking at XenApp, we have a different architecture that we do need to be aware of. So we have the architecture where your delivery controllers are going to be sitting in the middle of everything. And I'm going to go ahead and mark up my system here. Yeah, someone did mention 2014 is supported on the system, so that you can use 2014. I neglected to update that. The delivery controller is your primary machine that has XenApp XenDesktop on it. This is going to be at the center of everything, and it's going to be in communication with the SQL Server database. This is going to be two-way communication. If the database goes down, we have connection leasing, which will allow the delivery controllers to continue brokering connections into the resources. So it's no longer a single point of failure, but we do have a backup capability inside of our system. It's in contact with Active Directory for authentication, with StoreFront, as well as the license server, Studio, and your Citrix Director. It also has communication with the hypervisor that are hosting your resources inside of the system. So the hypervisor will be power managing the machines that we're hosting our resources on. So we may have a server machine that will be hosting desktops or applications, as well as a client operating system, Windows 8, Windows 10, Feature Pack T, Feature Pack 3 provides us with the capability of integrating Windows 10 into the system. This also provides desktops. We can also provide applications on the system. So these are some components that we'll have inside of the environment that will need to be deployed in your system in a high availability capacity. So for the most part, you're going to have a minimum of 2 delivery controllers. You want to have a minimum of 2 storefront servers, and your SQL Server database, you want to provide some sort of high availability clustering, mirroring, or always-on capabilities. So we want to provide all of that. But the delivery controller sits at the middle of everything in the system. When we look at the architecture, though, from an administrative standpoint, we kind of chunk it out into 6 different areas for management inside of our system. We're going to be looking at the management features for the most part today. We have the user layer where the user comes into the system. These are your external or internal devices coming in either via a Citrix receiver or coming in using HTML5. They'll come in either via StoreFront or NetScaler or both on the system. The access layer defines how the user is getting in, StoreFront, or are they coming in via NetScaler. Once they get in, we have the control layer, which are the physical machines you'll see inside of your system. We're going to have the delivery controllers, minimum of 2. You'll have your image controllers, which are the components that are deploying your machines on the system. So these are the actual machines in your infrastructure, the database, the license server, Active Directory. All of these are your database systems. What we're going to look at today are going to be the resource layer. We're going to look at the resource layer. How are we providing the resources for our deployment in the system? So what operating system and what applications are we going to give? And I'm going to do a real quick demonstration on publishing application because that seems to be where most people want to go. And we can also personalize things using profiles, policies, PVDs, etc. On the system. And yes, when users come into the system, if they come in externally, the NetScaler can pass through the credentials to StoreFront, so the user will not need to log on a second time. When we're deploying resources, we look at the machines that are providing the resources for our users. Now, one of the nice things about the way we do the system is we no longer have what I call a multi-master system. So essentially what you're going to see is this. Let's go and open up a new document here. What you would normally see is you would have your delivery control, you have your in XenApp 6.5, you would have your XenApp servers. You would come in and put an application, say Word, the 2012 on here. We'd put 2012, we would install 2012 onto each one of these machines. you would update each of the machines. There are multiple ways of providing the machines out using provisioning services or some other. But if you're using just a single machine and you create every one of your XenApp servers, this is what I call a multi-master system. The multi-master system requires you to publish or install your application on every single machine. When you do updates, you have to do the same updates on each machine individually. Whereas in the new environment, we create a master machine. So we'll create a master machine. Let's say we create a Windows 2012 environment. So we have a Win 2012 server. We install Word on the server. The 2012 server is used to create what's called a base disk on the system. So we'll have a base disk here. Then the base disk is used to provision out multiple machines inside of your system. So we would have multiple machines inside of our environment deploying out the resources that we installed on the original machine. So since they all come in from the original server, the base disk will have everything that's on the original machine. Now these machines are going to have everything. When I do updates, I come in and do my updates on the machine here. Now the update is on that one machine. I would update the base. Everybody automatically gets it. So this is using the single master system to deploy our environment. And when we do deploy applications, it's now a menu option. So we don't have to worry about doing each individual application on the system. So I'm going to go in and create I'm going to go ahead and publish an application. So I'm going to choose to deploy a new application. Currently, I have Excel, PowerPoint, and Word published out onto my system, a calculator as well. So I'm going to publish out, we'll just say Access. So I have a hosted apps delivery group. So I'm going to choose to add in an application on this machine. This delivery group points to multiple servers. We'll come in. The system is now a menu option. So I'll come in on the system and provide the applications I want to publish. So I could come in and say I want to publish out I didn't install Access. We'll just say I want to do Notepad. I'm just going to highlight everything I want to publish. So you can come in and do paint and snipping. It's now a menu option for publishing out applications. And since we do it as a menu option, we know a couple of things. One, it's on the servers. So I don't have to worry any longer about publishing an application to a server it doesn't exist on. Two, all the applications will have their own configuration settings. Will have that take on the delivery group. So they will inherit all of their settings from the original machine. So these will all be the same for encryption, for resolution, all of it. If, however, I need to add in an application manually, I do have the ability to add in an application manually and click the path to the executable on the machine. So if it's not actually installed via control panel, it's still there, and do some command line arguments as well. And if I do need to make some additional changes on a system, I can change the application properties here locally. And I can even limit the visibility so only certain users will be used in the system. Okay. So turn this guy off because it's already published. And then it would just be published, and now I've got these applications that are now published on the system. So in the course of about a minute, you could publish about 100 applications just by clicking. And you can ensure that you don't have, that the applications are not going to have any issues with publishing because they are on all the machines. Well, some of the newer features that were not available in 7.5 and earlier, in earlier versions when they first came out, are the session lingering, pre-launch, application folder organization, and using desktop icons. The session lingering allows you to go into your application delivering servers and determine how the system is going to handle pre-launch capability. So with a pre-launch, we can pre-launch a session on these servers before the user actually initiates an application. Exactly the same capability we had in XenApp 6.5. This is when the user logs on to receiver, we'll go ahead and launch an application. Then once the session has been launched, it's going to hang around for a period of time. So the default is 8 hours. And we may want to change that to 30 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever you want. So we'll keep that session launched, ready to go for the user to come in. The license will be checked out, and we can move forward. We can also hang it around when the user logs off of their last session, so where we can come in and allow the session to remain in place after the user closes the last application on the system. So you can hang around for 8 hours, 2 hours, whatever you want inside of your system. We also have folder organization. So within the folder organization, we can organize our folders inside of Studio based on organizational needs. What do you want on your system? So what you'd see is when you look at your applications, you'll see folders, and if I needed to, I could create a new folder and then allow my administrators to come in and administrate these via that. So I'll go ahead and create a new folder very quickly. We'll just say Office Apps, and we'll just click OK. Once the Office Apps folder is there, I'll go show all my apps. I'll just say, you know what, I'm going to take my Office applications and I'm going to move them into the Office Apps folder. This will have absolutely no impact on StoreFront whatsoever. This is just for administrative purposes, so that you don't have to see 200 applications on the one system. So we have the application folders that we can use inside of the system, which we didn't have previously. We've also got connection leasing. And with connection leasing, your delivery controllers will cache previously brokered connections into resources on the controllers. So any user that logs on and creates a connection into a server desktop or Microsoft Word or Excel, that connection will be remembered on the controller. In the eventuality that the SQL Server database goes down, the controller will then default over to the connection leasing, and any user that's coming into the system and connecting up to a previously launched resource will send them into the last connection that they had for that resource. So if on Monday a user comes in, they launch Word, it goes to server 3. On Wednesday, the SQL Server database goes down, the user goes to launch Word, we're going to send them right back to server 3, even if server 3 is fully loaded. So the database failure no longer is going to result in downtime for the whole site. It will minimize what you can do on new users and new connections, but you're still able to get existing users into the system on your environment. So these are some of the newer features that we have inside of the system. Now we have some feature packs that are out for the XenApp XenDesktop environment. We have Feature Pack 1, which was released in March. This brings out some session recording capability that we used to have in XenApp 6.5, so they brought that back. Some additional HDX optimizations. Feature Pack 2 came out, which added some additional capabilities for the HDX real-time. The receiver. StoreFront 3.0 came out, as well as the ability to support Linux virtual desktops inside of the system. And then Feature Pack 3 just came out. It provides some increased access for Windows 10, some more HDX policy templates, some enhanced printing capabilities, as well as some additional device security and performance, one of them being that you can prevent a jailbroken device from coming into your system in the environment. Now with StoreFront, we've got some new features inside of StoreFront that you can use, and I've got 2 storefronts on the system for this. And yes, to answer, someone just asked, does it support UPS, the Universal Print Server? Yes. We've got the new features of StoreFront. We have anonymous logons, so you can create a storefront that does not require the user to log on. Very useful in a kiosk situation. Receiver for HTML5 to allow your users to come in over HTML5 instead of the receiver. This is disabled by default. We can use mandatory applications. With mandatory applications, this gives you the ability to simulate a web interface where you see all the applications on the storefront screen for the users. Parallel resource enumeration, when we have multiple site deployments inside of a single storefront, we'll enumerate applications and resources all at once, as well as smart card authentication and some additional NetScaler capabilities. When you're looking at the storefronts, I've got two storefronts up in the system, and I'll just to show you very quickly the differences between the two. I've got a storefront server. This is storefront 2.6. I'll have the user log on. This is going to give you the standard green bubble screen where you're going to have the desktops and apps. On the apps, you'll see the subscription menu over on the side. Storefront 2.0 has made a change in the way it shows things on the system. Storefront 3 gives us a different environment. So just CCH, admin 1. This provides us with favorites, applications, and desktops in the system. So you're going to see a separate component on your storefront. So we'll have favorites, we'll have desktops, which will show your desktops. You can then add these desktops to the favorites on the system, as well as showing all of the applications that the user is going to do. They basically took the subscription menu and just presented it in a different fashion. So we have some additional components on this as well. So these are the 2.6 and the 3.0. We've also got Director for monitoring the system. So we've got the Citrix Director that can be used to monitor your deployment within your system from a single panel. Now, somebody asked a question, is this replacing EdgeSite? It's taken components from EdgeSite, but it's going to report components in real time. So you're going to see real-time information on your deployment versus only historical. So we flipped it, but we still have the historical information. So when we're looking at Director, we have a single pane. This is our dashboard that's going to allow you to see, do we have any user connection failures? Do we have any failed desktops on the system? Wait till the system refreshes. So where are we seeing failures inside of the system? And do we have any licensing issues that are coming up? If you have no issues going on inside of your system, the environment, these will automatically cancel these out, and it gives you information about what you're looking at in each one. From a help desk perspective, I can come in and look at the sessions that are currently connected on my system. So I can look at the sessions that are currently connected. I have 11. I have a couple of users inside here. So if I needed to, I could look at all the users that are currently logged into the system. I can then send messages to one or more of these as necessary. I could log them off. So your help desk team can actually log them off. Now, from an administrator standpoint, we also have the ability to look at trends. We can get historical data. Now, somebody did mention, now Director is not the same as EdgeSite, so you don't have the same reports built into the system. So it's not a full replacement by for EdgeSite. It gives you a lot of the capabilities. Now, we can look at historical data for sessions, connection failures, failed desktops, etc. We've now got a new feature for hosted application usage. So you can look at the application usage over a period of time within your system in the environment. So I can look at the last 24 hours, and depending on the licensing version you have, you can actually go back to look at data over the last year as necessary. If I need to, I can go to the actual sessions that are in for a user. So let's say HR user 1. Your help desk team can log into the dashboard, go to a particular user, and double click on the user. This will navigate them directly to what the user is currently doing, and we can look at their desktop. So this one happens to be a desktop. If I need additional details, I can then click at the details page. I can look at details on what they're currently doing on the desktop, what's going on with the machine, turn it on, power it off, put it into maintenance mode. I can look at the session that's being deployed on there. Is it active? Do we have any policies? I can then look at the logon duration for this user over a period of time. So I can look at the current session. So the GPOs took 3 seconds. The average over the last 7 days, and then how long did it take the delivery group over the last 7 days. So we can look at how long did it take to create the session, the profile, etc. We can look at various components. We can also determine personalization. If we're using a roaming profile solution, we can use Director to reset these as necessary. So this is your single management. Don't have a lot of time to go into all these, but we can I'll use these as necessary. Now all of this, guys, is really related on the licensing. Everything you can do inside of a 7.6 environment is license based. The infrastructure is the same. We just unlock features when we bring in additional licensing for the environment. Now, the demonstrations I gave you for the XenApp application publishing or the storefront, these are available on the PDF. You can go to a link and you'll see a more in-depth description of all the processes that went on in the system for those particular functions. Now, at this point, I'm going to answer some questions. I'm going to go through the questions, take about 5 minutes to come through and answer questions, hopefully. Director is the replacement for EdgeSite. EdgeSite, somebody asked, is being deprecated out. It's being broken out into multiple components. Some are installed on your NetScaler, some are installed within your XenApp XenDesktop environment. And it's available with all versions. You can even use the Citrix Director 7.6 to monitor your XenApp 6.5 environment. So if you still have a XenApp 6.5 environment, you're going to be able to come in and manage it from there and monitor it as that well. And we can do a historical dating. Now, as I mentioned, you do not have all the capabilities that you do inside of EdgeSite. So it's a trade-off. Now, if the SQL Server goes down, the question is what happens if the SQL Server is rebooted due to patches? The system will wait 2 minutes. The system by default will wait 2 minutes. Once it loses connectivity with the SQL Server database, it's going to wait 2 minutes to allow the SQL Server to fail over. If you don't have any failover or the failover is not functional, the system will then revert to the connection leasing. Once the SQL Server is down, you can't access Studio. You can't make any changes to your system because those changes would be made to your database. And if you're not connected, no changes are made into the system. Now, good question. Someone asked, if the delivery controllers lose their connection to the SQL Server database, what happens to the existing connection? Nothing. They will continue to work just fine. Just new connections will not be able to use the SQL Server database unless they're in connection leasing. So someone asked, what methods are used to deploy the master base disk to the target system? The base disk is going to, so someone asked on the base disk, I'm assuming you're referring to this here. This is going to be using MCS or Machine Creation Services. Alternatively, you could image this out to a VHD file via provisioning services and provide out the image that way. So that's one way of doing it. And now someone asked, can you organize applications for users? So I'm assuming you mean that when we're looking at the folders inside of the applications, can we organize those on storefront the same way? Yes, but not here. We have to do that on the application itself. So on the application, if I wanted Excel to be on a folder called Office Apps under the location option, under the delivery option, I would say the application category, and then I would say Office Apps, and then that would then create a category for the users on storefront or web interface. Now, very good question. Someone just asked, will the connection leasing cache be replicated between the delivery controllers? The answer to that is yes and no. The delivery controllers do not communicate with each other. So what the system will do is this. you'll have your two delivery controllers. So we'll have delivery controller 1 and delivery controller 2. So we have DC1, delivery controller 2. You'll have cache 1 and cache 2. These caches will be uploaded to the SQL Server database and then pushed out and synced out with all the other servers in the system. This way, if a delivery controller reboots, it will contact the SQL Server, and the SQL Server will send the cache out, so it'll always have that cache available inside of the system. Someone asked a question, we have a single global farm now. These are small and can't justify a SQL setup at each site. You could use a single SQL Server at your main site to get that to work. Yes, RSA is supported. No, Director is not the same as Edge Site Center, Insight Center. Insight Center is something that works separately, and it's more of a networking. Oldest version, you can actually go down to XP, but if you're using XP or Vista, you're going to need to use the older VDAs. The latest VDA is not supported on XP or Vista, so you'll need to make sure you're using the virtual delivery agent that comes with XenDesktop 5.6. Consequently, some of the features are not supported, like pre-launch, etc. AppV is supported in the system here. We still have roaming profiles. Somebody asked about roaming profiles. Now, someone just asked a question, how do you sign up for a training for these classes? The best way to sign up for a training is to go to www.layer8training.com. That should be on the PDF. Like us on Facebook, facebook.com/layer8training. Follow us on Twitter, layer8training. There's our toll-free number. You can call us directly. Sign up for classes. We have a very extensive schedule, so you can pretty much guarantee that you'll be able to take a XenApp class, our 7.6 class, within the next week or so. I myself am teaching a 300 level course next week. So email us, download that document within the system. So download that PDF. It will have some links to some additional documents.